Do you ever feel like gratitude is just a buzzword? It's just something you hear all the time from like every guru on you should have gratitude, have an attitude of gratitude, have a gratitude journal, do all this gratitude stuff, be grateful. So many people talk about having gratitude and that it's great, but I don't think a lot of people do a great job at explaining why it's important or why it's beneficial. So in this video, I want to make a couple of quick things that I've observed in why gratitude is important and how it can help you. So jumping right in, it shifts your focus away from what you don't have to what you have, right? And so this is an exercise in faith, and I'll kind of go into this a little bit more later on, but when you're focused on what you don't have, you have this perceived gap, there's like an ideal, there's this whole other piece that I'm going to touch on later, and so you're wanting stuff that you don't have. There's this void, and so to have gratitude is to have faith in saying, I know that I don't have what I want right now, but it's going to come. And so it shifts focus from what you have to what you don't have. That one's pretty obvious. What you're working with is enough. So this starts to go deeper, and in a little bit I'll go into the gap and the gain a little bit as well. But so number one is it shifts your focus from what you have to from what you don't have to what you have. Number two is what you're working with is enough. Have you ever noticed how like the car that somebody drives, or even the things that they own, but a lot of times for me, I'm a car person, so I'll notice someone's car and their car says a lot about them, right? It might be it might be a wreck inside and a wreck outside, or it might be spotless inside and spotless outside, and you're like, you don't even have a garage. How is it always this waxed and spotless and perfect? And so what you have and the condition that that thing is in is often an extension of who you are. There's a flip side of that, right? There's the other piece. So I'm talking about material things, but there's also not just physical, but there's an awareness of your gifts and abilities. And so I realize that this kind of sounds crazy, so I'm going to slow down and break it down. Gratitude, you can have gratitude for things that are both physical, right? And then obviously the things that you already have, like your gifts, your skills, your abilities. And so I'm saying you are enough to fulfill the purpose for which you were created. You are enough to do the thing for which you were put here to do. And another way of putting this, like really simply, is like, if you're a person of faith, like, do you think that God made a mistake in giving you the things that he gave you and taking away the things that he's taken away from you and withholding the things that he's withheld from you this far? I doubt that that's the case. What you have is enough to do the thing that you're here to do. Now, that doesn't mean you're stagnant and you don't go on a journey of growing and learning and trying to become more. It just means that you have the tools right now to get to the next level that you need to get to do the thing you were put here to do. So number one is it shifts your focus. Number two is what you are is already enough. And number three is a little bit towards the gap and the gain. The Gap and the Gain is a great book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And it talks about ideals and how we measure ourselves and a way to optimize that. I'm not going to spoil the book for you. You should go read it. But gratitude is a redirection from the distraction of focusing on what others have. We talked about that earlier. It's a redirection from the distraction of focusing on ideals. This is what I should have. This is who I should be. This is what I should have done by now. This is the partner I should have. This is the business I should have. This is the kind of revenue it should have. And focusing on what you do have, what you already have, and how far you've come, right? The book, The Gap and the Gain, I'll spoil it a little bit, I guess, is less focused on ideals and more focused on who was I 6 months ago and how am I different? How much have I grown? Who was I 6 years ago? How am I different? How have I grown? And so that's like what you already have. That experience is something you already have versus an ideal, which is an ever-moving goalpost. And this starts to go into positive psychology research from like Sean Aker about how, we kind of keep moving the goalpost on and on and on to a point where we're never happy. And it makes sense because the goalpost is always moving. It never stops. And so measuring backwards can be a way to, is an important piece of gratitude. The last piece that I have, this is just like a prayer that I have for me. I don't know if you guys are people of faith, but one that I pray for me is one I touched on in the previous point, which is what you're already working with is enough. In this gap and the gain section, point 3, this is something I pray like every day. I say, thank you for everything you've given me. Thank you for everything you've taken away from me. Thank you for everything you've withheld from me. I have gratitude for all of those things because I'm starting to see that there's a reason that all of those things have come in and are out or never entered into my life. And so it's all good. It's all for good. And it's like the story of Joseph, right? Like when Joseph is talking to his brothers and he said, what you guys meant for evil, God meant for good. So number 1 is shifting focus. Number 2 is what you're working with is already enough. Number 3 is the gap and the gain. And what that really means is like not measuring an ideal, but measuring what you've already got. And number 4 is when we chase, they run. When we run, they chase. So what does this mean? Gratitude is the process of being still. I probably should have led with this because people would have stayed into the video for much longer, I think, because this one's a little bit more of a thinker. But like when we are ungrateful or when we're wanting, we're always moving around, we're spiraling around to all the things we want or don't have or this or that. Gratitude is a sense of stillness. It's a sense of not being content forever with what you have now, but being content with what you have now, knowing that things that you want in the future will come. That you have the dedication, the determination, the skills, the gifts, the abilities to get those things in the future when they're ready to come to you. But you're grateful for what you have in the present. And so it's this sense of stillness. It's like this sense of being still. Instead of constantly chasing things or happiness, they become harder to apprehend. That's why I said when we chase, they run, right? Like in the dating world, it's like the more that you chase somebody, the more they run away. The more you run away, the more they chase you. And it's kind of the same with gratitude. It's like when you sit back and you're like, I'm grateful for these things that I have. I'm grateful for the things that have come to me versus chasing after things that you don't already have. It's kind of like that same metaphor. The gap feels further away when you're ungrateful for what you have and you're looking for things you want versus when you're grateful for what you already have. It feels so much closer. It feels so much more meaningful. And I think that's why there's that verse in the Bible that says, be still and know. I think this is a component of being still, is like, in some ways, gratitude helps us live in the moment. So that was number 4. And number 5 is the spiral of self. So this weekend at church, they went into this whole thing on anxiety and whatever, and it had me thinking so many times, if you think about any recent moments when you've had, I'm not even going to ask if you've dealt with anxiety or depression. Like in today's world, I think just about everybody deals with those. And so I won't even ask if you do. But in any recent moments when you've been going through depression or anxiety or any of those things, think about it for a second. Think about what was going on in your head, what caused it, what triggered it, what were you thinking about? 99.9% of those times for me, and 99.9% of the times for the people that I coach or my friends and family, I realize that they're starting to think about them. Even if it's a situation that has to do with somebody else, they're thinking about a conversation they had with that person or a conversation that, how they looked in that conversation. They're thinking about themselves. And so 99% of the time, the anxiety and depression comes from these moments of us being at the center and what's missing. And so I think those are 2 things to just be aware of, and you can have them in the back of your mind. But it's a cool thing that actually came up at church this weekend was like, if you want to flip anxiety on its head and turn it off, and you're like, the example that was given was you're in a restaurant and you're starting to feel anxious, there's all these people, it's loud. It was like, ask the other person that you're with, or ask the host or the server, like, how was their day? What's going on in their life? And just get out of your head as quickly as possible to go and make it about somebody else. And that can be a quick way to overcome anxiety. I won't get into suppressing feelings and emotions and all that because I don't think that's healthy. But these are five reasons that I've observed and why gratitude is really important. I don't really think anyone does a good job explaining it other than just saying like, oh, it's so great and there's science and research and blah, blah, blah. But these are 5 tangible, tactical things that I've noticed in my life and the people around me on why gratitude works. So hope these help, and I'll see you guys in the next one.